Have you ever noticed that once someone betrays you, no matter how much they apologize, something invisible shatters, and it never quite feels the same again? You can sit across from them at the same table, laugh at the same jokes, even try to tell yourself that things are back to normal, but deep down, you know something vital has been broken. Trust, unlike most things, does not break with sound. It breaks in silence, in the quiet click of a lock that will never turn the same way again. Think back to a moment when a friend whispered your secret to others, or when a promise was made to you and then discarded as if it never mattered. The wound is not in the action itself, but in what it represents, the collapse of safety. A friendship is not just conversations and memories, it is a sacred container, an unspoken agreement that your heart will be held gently. And when that container cracks, no matter how carefully you glue the pieces, the fracture lines remain sharp, visible, undeniable. Psychologists call trust the invisible currency of human relationships. Neuroscience shows that when we feel safe with someone, our brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, weaving invisible threads between two minds. But betrayal has the opposite effect. It floods your body with cortisol, the stress chemical, leaving you restless, suspicious, and unable to settle into the ease you once knew. It is as if your nervous system remembers, even when your conscious mind begs for forgiveness. The body, in its quiet wisdom, whispers, "Be careful now." Imagine a child holding a glass of water. If the glass slips and shatters, the child can try to pick up the pieces and tape them back together. They might pour water into it again, but it will always leak. That is what trust feels like after betrayal. We keep trying to pour love, laughter, and closeness into a vessel that can no longer hold it, all while pretending the leaks don't exist. Yet, somewhere in the silence between words, you notice the friendship feels hollow, as if its foundation has been replaced with sand. And so you find yourself torn. Do you stay and pretend, trying to breathe life into what has already withered? Or do you walk away, carrying the ache of what was lost? That is the paradox of broken trust. It ties you to someone, even as it separates you from them. It makes you ache for closeness while guarding yourself against it. And perhaps that is the most haunting part, realizing that betrayal is not just about them, it changes who you are in every friendship that follows. The first fracture of trust is never just about one moment. It lingers, echoes, and reshapes the way you see people. And from this fracture begins the deeper question: why does betrayal cut so deeply that even time struggles to heal it? To answer that, we must look not at adulthood, but at the very first place you learned what trust meant in childhood, where your earliest bonds carved the blueprint for all the ones to come. Have you ever noticed how the earliest betrayals often come not from strangers, but from the very people you believed would never fail you? A child waits at the window, small hands pressed against the glass, scanning the street for a parent who promised they'd come. Minutes stretch into hours. The sun falls, and the child learns something unspoken, that promises are fragile, and that waiting often ends in disappointment. That single evening plants a seed, one that silently grows into the soil of their nervous system. Childhood is where you first learn the language of trust. Every time someone keeps a promise, your nervous system settles, teaching you that the world is safe, that others can be relied on. But when promises dissolve, when caregivers forget, when friends laugh at your secrets instead of guarding them, a different lesson roots itself deep within you. Attachment theory explains this precisely. Secure children learn to expect care, while anxious children learn to jose, cling, and avoidant children learn to turn away before the hurt comes. What feels like personality later in life is often nothing more than the echo of those first lessons. Picture a schoolyard moment. A child, vulnerable and brave, whispers a secret to a friend at recess. By lunchtime, that secret is ammunition for teasing. The sting is not just in the laughter, but in the realization that intimacy is dangerous, that closeness invites risk. Neuroscience tells us that repeated betrayals like these shape brain circuits designed for survival. The amygdala sharpens, scanning constantly for social threats, while the hippocampus tags moments of safety and danger like signposts. Over time, the child begins to anticipate abandonment before it even arrives. It is haunting how quickly the heart learns to defend itself. A child who wanted nothing more than to be held learns instead to wear a mask, smiling while quietly preparing for the next disappointment. This is how suspicion becomes second nature, how walls are built not out of malice but out of necessity. You don't decide to doubt people. The doubt lives in you like a shadow, planted long before you understood what shadows were. And so, by the time you step into adulthood, your friendships are already shaped by this invisible inheritance. Some of your defenses are so familiar, you barely notice them, the hesitation, before sharing something personal, the instinct to test someone's loyalty, the quiet readiness to pull away at the first sign of inconsistency. Trust, or the lack of it, was not first learned in adulthood. It was etched into you in childhood, in the moments when you reached out expecting warmth and found only emptiness. The first lessons of trust are never forgotten. They live in the body, in the rhythm of your heartbeat when someone cancels plans, in the knot in your stomach when you reveal too much. And from those early fractures, the mask of adulthood begins to form, a mask that smiles and speaks, easily, but hides the old suspicion burning quietly beneath. Have you ever wondered why, even in a room full of laughter, you sometimes feel the need to keep part of yourself hidden? You sit among friends, smiling, nodding, telling stories, and yet there's a small, quiet part of you that remains locked away. That hidden place is where the old betrayals live. You may look open, but inside, you carry the mask of someone who has learned that trust is not given freely, but guarded like a fragile flame in a storm. As an adult, you perfect this mask. To others, you may seem warm, approachable, even easygoing, but what they cannot see is the constant background hum of suspicion, the way you replay words in your head, searching for signs of disloyalty, the way you hesitate before sharing something deeply personal. Childhood fractures do not disappear, they mutate, transforming into subtle defense mechanisms. The walls you built long ago to survive, neglect, or betrayal have followed you, invisible but unyielding. Consider the friend who laughs along with everyone but never truly shares their own struggles, or the one who clings desperately, texting over and over, terrified of being abandoned, or the one who withdraws completely the moment they sense a slight shift in tone. These are not random quirks. They are the echoes of earlier wounds, patterns born from the nervous system's attempt to keep you safe. Attachment research shows that people who grew up with broken promises often carry either anxious hypervigilance or avoidant detachment into their adult relationships. You either hold on too tightly or you never hold on at all. It is haunting how skillfully the mask blends into everyday life. You may joke with colleagues, share meals with friends, even fall in love, all while keeping the most tender parts of yourself under lock and key. Like an oxygen mask, it lets you breathe just enough to survive, but never fully inhale the richness of connection. You tell yourself you're protecting your heart, yet in truth, you are also starving it. And in those quiet moments, the drive home after a night out, the silence after a conversation ends, you can feel the weight of the mask pressing against you. It is not that you don't want closeness. It is that closeness feels like walking into a room where the floor might collapse at any second. So you laugh, you smile, you play the role of the friend who is fine, while deep inside, the child who once waited at the window still whispers, "Be careful." This is how trust's fracture survives into adulthood, not as open wounds, but as shadows that shape your every interaction. You seem whole, but you carry cracks. And those cracks quietly dictate how you love, how you share, and how much of yourself you allow to be seen. Yet even masks, no matter how polished, can't silence the question that lingers. What would it take to finally feel safe again? That answer lies not in performance, but in the deeper science of how trust lives in the brain and body. Why does betrayal linger so stubbornly, even when someone insists they've changed? Why does a single broken promise weigh more heavily than 100 kept ones? Science has been trying to answer these questions for decades, and what it reveals is both fascinating and unsettling. Your brain is wired to protect you, not to forgive easily. Neuroscience shows that trust is not just an abstract moral idea, it is a biological state. When you feel safe with someone, your brain releases oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. It softens your defenses, lowers fear, and creates a sense of warmth and openness. It's the reason a friend's presence can make you feel calmer, or why laughter with someone close can feel like oxygen to the soul. But betrayal floods the body with cortisol, the stress hormone. The very system designed to connect you becomes hijacked by alarm bells. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detector, begins to tag not just the betrayer, but the entire category of closeness itself as dangerous. Suddenly, intimacy feels like a risk, even when it comes from someone new. Psychologists studying forgiveness have found that while apologies and consistent efforts at repair can rebuild some trust, the original sense of safety rarely returns. One study revealed that after betrayal, people tend to forgive on the surface, but remain hypervigilant underneath, scanning for any sign of repeated harm. It is as though the nervous system remembers, even when your mind wants to move on. The wound may scar, but scars are not invisible. John Gottman, one of the most influential researchers on relationships, described what he called emotional bids. These are the small, everyday moments when you reach out for connection, a glance, a question, a quiet sigh. Healthy bonds are built when these bids are met with attention and care, but betrayal corrodes that delicate fabric. Once trust is broken, you hesitate before sending a bid, fearing it will be ignored or mocked. And when bids shrink, relationships starve. It is not always the catastrophic betrayals that kill friendships, but the quiet absence of responsiveness that follows. This is why, despite culture's insistence on forgiveness, so many of your attempts at repair still feel hollow. It is not that you are too unforgiving, too bitter, or too weak. It is that your biology refuses to place you in the same danger twice. Your mind knows that people can change, but your body knows that safety is never guaranteed. And so you walk the tightrope of wanting connection but fearing collapse. Science confirms what you have always felt, but perhaps could never put into words. Trust, once broken, never returns in its original form. It can be patched, managed, or softened, but the nervous system still keeps the score. And from this truth emerges a darker realization. When trust survives only in fragments, it carries shadows that slowly poison the very friendship you are trying to save. Have you ever tried to drink from a well you knew was poisoned, convincing yourself that maybe this time the water would be clean? That is what a half-healed friendship feels like. On the surface, you patch the crack with apologies, you share laughs again, you tell yourself the past is behind you. But beneath the surface, something toxic continues to seep. The well may look full, but every sip carries the bitter aftertaste of betrayal. You sense it in small, almost invisible ways. The hesitation before you speak, wondering if your words will be repeated elsewhere. The quick glance at their phone, scanning for proof they still value you. Or worse, searching for signs they've already betrayed you again. Paranoia creeps in like a shadow you can't shake, and every silence becomes suspicious. What used to feel like comfort now feels like walking on glass, barefoot, careful, cautious, never truly at ease. Psychologists warn that unresolved betrayal doesn't simply fade with time. Instead, it festers. The brain becomes hypervigilant, the amygdala alert to every shift in tone, every slight change in mood. It's as if your nervous system now treats friendship as a battlefield, scanning constantly for threats. This is why even after forgiveness, you catch yourself replaying old scenes, dissecting conversations, or testing loyalty in ways you wish you didn't. You are not paranoid without cause. Your body is reminding you of the danger it once survived. And yet, here lies the paradox. You cling to the very friendship that is slowly eroding you. Because loneliness feels unbearable, you choose a bond laced with cracks over the silence of solitude. You tell yourself that something is better than nothing, even when that something corrodes your sense of safety day by day. Forgiveness, when it comes without true repair, is not freedom, it is a cage. You smile, you nod, you pretend things are fine, but underneath, both of you feel the tension that never leaves the room. It is haunting to realize that sometimes the bond itself becomes the poison. You try to water a dying garden, but the soil is already salted. You try to build on a foundation, but the cracks only widen with time. Half-healed trust creates relationships that look alive on the outside, but are hollow within, like houses that stand tall until the storm comes and reveals the rot in their beams. And perhaps the cruelest truth is this: staying in a poisoned bond doesn't protect you from loneliness. It only replaces silence with suspicion, emptiness with anxiety. You are not held, you are haunted, and deep inside, you know it. Which raises the next haunting question: why does society keep urging you to forgive and move on, even when the bond is already beyond repair? Have you ever noticed how quickly the world urges you to forgive? The moment you speak of betrayal, voices rise around you with rehearsed wisdom. Let it go, don't hold grudges, move on, be the bigger person. It sounds noble, almost saintly, but beneath the polished phrases lies a silent pressure. The command to swallow your pain, bury your anger, and patch over wounds that never had the chance to heal. From childhood, you are taught that forgiveness is a virtue, that to be good is to keep peace at any cost. Religious teachings exalt the forgiver as holy, as though endurance of harm is a kind of sainthood. Movies script their endings around reconciliation, the sweeping embrace, the music swelling as two broken characters finally make amends. Family systems often reinforce the same story. The child who is told to hug their sibling after being hurt, the teenager told to respect relatives even when boundaries are violated, the adult told that keeping the family together is more important than confronting abuse. The message is clear: harmony matters more than truth. Psychologists have found that this pressure to forgive without repair creates what's called pseudo-forgiveness, a performance of peace that leaves resentment festering underneath. Studies on boundary setting reveal that people who feel forced to reconcile experience more anxiety and depression, not less, because their authentic emotions are silenced. Neuroscience even shows that when you suppress anger to maintain social acceptance, your stress response remains active, as though the betrayal is still happening in the body. But society rarely talks about that. Instead, it glorifies the myth of the good person, the one who forgives quickly, who never makes a scene, who smiles even when carrying a wound. The problem is that this myth confuses kindness with self-erasure. Forgiveness becomes less about liberation and more about obedience to social order. You are not healing, you are performing. And the performance is rewarded because it keeps the group intact, even if it destroys you privately. You've likely felt this weight yourself: the unease of pretending you are fine, the exhaustion of maintaining peace while carrying unspoken rage. It feels like living in a house where every crack in the wall has been painted over, but the structure remains unsound. No one wants to see the broken beams, so you smile, you nod, you play your part. Yet the silence within you grows heavier, and the bond feels more suffocating with each passing day. Perhaps this is the deeper question: is society's obsession with forgiveness truly about love, or is it about control? Does it honor human dignity, Or does it silence the truths that make relationships real? Forcing reconciliation may look beautiful in a picture frame, but inside, it breeds a resentment that cannot be named. And when resentment grows in silence, it eventually transforms into something even more devastating. The quiet emotional consequences that follow you into every corner of your life. Have you ever noticed how betrayal doesn't just wound the relationship? It rewrites the way you carry yourself through the world. Long after the apologies, long after the conversations, long after you convince yourself you've moved on, the weight still lingers. It follows you into the silence of your nights, when the world is asleep but your mind refuses to rest. You replay the moment of fracture over and over, as if by dissecting it one more time you might change its outcome. But the betrayal has already been carved into memory, and memory is a cruel companion. The emotional toll is heavier than most realize. You may find yourself lying awake, your chest tight, thoughts racing in endless circles. Trust, once broken, does not just affect your friendship, it unsettles your nervous system. Neuroscience shows that betrayal leaves the brain in a state of hyperarousal, flooding you with cortisol as though the danger were still present. Even when the threat has passed, your body lives as if the knife could strike again at any moment. This is why you feel restless, anxious, unable to fully settle into peace. There is also grief, though it rarely announces itself loudly. It arrives in subtler forms, the pang when you hear a song you once shared, the hollowness when you remember the laughter that used to flow so easily. Laughter, once safe, now feels contaminated, a reminder of how easily joy can turn to ashes. You begin to doubt not only the friend who betrayed you, but everyone who tries to come close. The shadow of doubt stretches across all future bonds, whispering that safety is an illusion. Psychologists have long noted that broken trust often breeds patterns of overthinking and withdrawal. You catch yourself scanning texts for hidden meanings, hesitating before opening up, questioning whether kindness is genuine or a mask hiding ulterior motives. What once felt natural leaning into another person, letting yourself be seen now, feels like stepping into an ambush. Over time, this guardedness reshapes your identity. You no longer see yourself simply as a friend, a lover, or a confidant. You become the wary one, the careful one, the one who no longer lets people in too far. And so the consequences ripple outward. Anxiety deepens. Depression can follow, carried by the quiet realization that some bonds cannot be repaired, no matter how much you long for them to return. Loneliness grows not from lack of people, but from the sense that closeness itself can no longer be trusted. You are surrounded, yet isolated. Loved, yet skeptical. Alive, yet haunted. This is the silent weight of broken trust. Not just the end of one friendship, but the erosion of the ease with which you once related to the world. It leaves scars that shape your choices, your boundaries, your capacity for intimacy. And yet, even under the weight of these scars, a question remains. Is there a way to live beyond them, to find healing not in the return of what was lost, but in the building of something new? Have you ever noticed how much energy you spend trying to repair what has already collapsed? You replay conversations, rehearse apologies, and imagine scenarios where everything feels whole again. But the truth is, not every friendship was meant to be restored. Some were meant to end, and their ending is not the end of you. Healing begins not in forcing the old glass back together, but in realizing you can drink from a new vessel. The first step is often the hardest, letting go of the illusion that reconciliation is the only path to peace. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same. Forgiveness is an inner release, a decision to no longer let the wound define you. Reconciliation, however, requires safety, consistency, and mutual effort. Many confuse the two, returning again and again to relationships that can no longer hold them. The weight begins to lift when you realize that forgiving someone in your heart does not mean you must invite them back into your life. Psychologists emphasize the importance of rebuilding self-trust after betrayal. When someone breaks their promise, it is not only their integrity that fractures your confidence in your own judgment cracks too. You begin to doubt yourself. How did I not see this coming? Why did I trust so blindly? To heal, you must relearn to trust your own instincts. Journaling, therapy, and reflective practices help you untangle the story, allowing you to see that betrayal speaks more about their choices than your worth. Healing also means creating boundaries, not as walls to keep the world out, but as the framework that allows new connections to feel safe. Boundaries are the soil in which trust can grow again. Without them, you remain vulnerable to repeating the same cycles. Studies on resilience show that people who set clear limits experience less anxiety and stronger recovery after relational trauma. You are not cold for protecting yourself. You are wise for learning how to honor your own needs. Imagine yourself standing in the ashes of a burnt garden. You cannot force the old flowers to return, but you can clear the ground, plant new seeds, and water them with care. The garden may look different, but in its difference lies its beauty. The scars you carry do not vanish, but they can transform reminders of what you survived, not open wounds dictating how you must live. The paradox of broken trust is that while some bonds cannot be rebuilt, you can rebuild yourself. You can step out of the cage of resentment and into a life where scars are carried with dignity, where solitude is not feared but embraced, and where future bonds can be chosen with clarity rather than desperation. And yet, even in this rebuilding, one final truth remains. Trust will never again feel unbreakable. It will always carry fragility, and perhaps that fragility is not a weakness, but the most human part of all. Have you ever held a piece of broken glass in your hand, sharp edges glinting in the light, and thought about how it once was? Whole? That is what trust feels like. Once it shatters, you may gather the fragments, you may glue them carefully back together, but the cracks will always remain, jagged lines running like scars across the surface. And though the glass can still hold water, you can never forget where it broke. Trust is the invisible architecture of every bond you hold dear. It is the foundation beneath laughter, the air that makes closeness possible, the quiet certainty that allows you to rest in another's presence without fear. And yet, it is fragile, perhaps the most fragile thing of all. Neuroscience tells us that your brain remembers danger more vividly than safety. A single betrayal imprints itself like fire upon your nervous system, while 100 acts of loyalty may fade into the background. This imbalance is not weakness, it is survival, but it leaves you carrying a truth that is both haunting and liberating. Trust will always carry fragility because people will always carry flaws. There is grief in this, of course. You want permanence. You want to believe that some bonds are unbreakable, that promises etched in closeness will never be erased. But life rarely gives you such certainties. Instead, it asks you to walk forward with the awareness that love, friendship, and loyalty are fragile gardens. Some will bloom faithfully through seasons. Others will wither after the first storm. The point is not to deny the fragility, but to embrace it, to water the bonds worth keeping, and to let go of those poisoned by betrayal. Perhaps the deeper truth is that broken trust does not only destroy, it teaches you to see more clearly, to know yourself more deeply, to choose more wisely. Some friendships end not because you failed, but because they were never meant to last beyond their season. And their breaking does not diminish you, it awakens you. So you carry the scars, but you carry them with dignity. You learn that trust, like glass, is never flawless, but it is still beautiful in its imperfection. You learn that safety is not in the absence of betrayal, but in the courage to face it and still move forward. And above all, you learn that clinging to what is already broken can chain you to the past, while letting go can free you for the future. Some friendships are not meant to be repaired. They are meant to teach you the cost of betrayal and the courage of walking forward alone. And perhaps that is the timeless truth. To live is to risk trust, to lose it, to mourn it, and to continue anyway, carrying both the cracks and the light that shines through them.